Welcome to the Succeed Against the Odds podcast. My name is Francesca Anastasi, also known as Sabea. I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I'm your host and mentor. And each week we bring you an inspiring person, an expert, or message, and some behind the scenes to help you ignite and unleash your potential. Thanks so much for listening. I am thrilled today because I have a very, very special guest, Elisa Hays. Welcome.
Thank you.
You have such an incredible story. Before we get to your story, I just want our audience to know that you're a consultant, an executive coach, empowering organizations and individuals, and you're a speaker and you speak internationally. For those who don't know you, Elisa, can you just give us a little bit of background on you? Tell us about you.
Sure. I've been on stage my whole life. I started on stage when I was 4 years old, and I liked it, so I never left. And I went on later in my life to have a company of touring entertainers, performers. We did interactive children's programs where we would take kids and dress them in costumes, put on a show with them as the stars of the show. And all of this happened very fast, improv style, with one professional presenter and an audience of adults. The whole point was to build kids' confidence in front of an audience, build their self-esteem, empower them to use their imaginations and spend less time in front of flat screens, and encourage adults to play with their kids, use their imagination, and spend less time watching their children through their telephone because they were more interested in capturing video or Instagram photos.
Wow, what a brilliant idea. So that was the motivation?
Yes, that was the whole point. It started out really just because I was an unemployed actor and I needed a job, but it became a mission. And the stories that we heard over and over from families that came to our programs was just amazing. I have a sign in my office, actually, up on the shelf, of one woman who wrote about bringing a foster child to the fair. Our clientele is all fairs and festivals throughout North America and some internationally as well, but primarily here in North America. And so this woman wrote a story about this foster boy who was staying with her. He brought her to the fair, brought her to the show. He got to be in front of an audience where people applauded him and praised him. He got to take a big bow and big smile. The thing about this little boy is he had just been taken from an abusive household and put into safety foster care. He begged every single day of the fair to go to be in that program because that's where he felt like a star.
Wow, how empowering to him to be able to have that opportunity and receive that. How it must have been unbelievably transformational for him.
I think it was. And I shared that with my staff, and that's why it's in my office as this point of this is why we do what we do. We don't do it so that we can be in front of an audience. We do it so that the audience members can have an experience that impacts their hearts and their lives.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to look at it. So, Elisa, how does one go from putting on these type of programs to now speaking to corporate audiences? It's quite the jump.
Dramatic rebranding campaign.
Even though it's still stage, it's a completely different stage. You went
right.
from acting to producing shows to now speaking, internationally. So can you enlighten us on that journey?
Well, the secret is, for anybody who wants to do this, the secret is you get hit by a semi truck that's going 65 miles an hour when you're not in a vehicle. So if you can endure that, and I don't recommend it, then you too can go to that kind of journey.
Oh my goodness, that is like I've read a little bit about your story, and I just get goosebumps and I shatter inside every time I'm reminded of what happened. Like we just said, get hit by a truck going 75 miles per hour. How do you actually even survive that in the first place? How, you know, like.
Right. I personally, because of my faith, I think God had a hand in that, but I had some amazing, amazing doctors along the way. And the reason that I speak to corporate audiences and association meetings, the wide variety of groups, from hospitals to dental hygienists to nutritional managers, a wide variety. The reason is because at the time I had 2 of my employees in the vehicle, and I was a boss. I run a company, a successful entrepreneur, doing my thing. Had spent a lot of time, of course, studying leadership. Anybody who has employees and is trying to improve the efficacy of their company either is studying leadership, or they certainly should. But I didn't really understand at the most foundational level what leadership means until that moment on a highway. I was driving with 2 employees on a 2-lane highway headed through Oklahoma, and we got caught in an ice storm where the temperatures dropped suddenly really rapidly. All of a sudden, I was driving a truck pulling a trailer, and all of a sudden the trailer swung out. I've got 2 young women who were 21 years old. I was 46 at the time, and this was just over 4 years ago. And they're looking at me terrified. I'm staying calm to keep them calm. The truck goes sliding across both lanes. There's only 2 of them, and slams into a guardrail and is stuck. It won't move. And there's nothing I can do to move that truck. So we're jackknifed on the highway, taking up most of the space. And I'm the only one who can see in the rearview mirror that there are the headlights of a semi-truck approaching very quickly, and it's going to hit us. So in that moment, I had a decision to make. I could run for safety because I was the closest to safety near the shoulder on the side of the highway. Or I could put the lives of these young women first, because if I didn't take care of them, they were probably going to die. And I realized, in retrospect, I wasn't thinking deeply about this at the moment, but I realized in retrospect that's the decision that every leader has to make. Are you looking out for yourself, or are you looking out for those who look to you? And I chose to look out for them. I evacuated these 2 young women from the truck. They had to run across an icy highway, slipped, fell. They were trying to take care of each other to get to the side of the highway. They managed to get there with non-life-threatening injuries, bruises, cuts, scrapes, that kind of thing. I got out of the truck as in the process we were hit by a semi that hit our trailer, then by a full-size SUV that hit the back end of the truck and spun things around, and then a third vehicle, a semi going 65 miles an hour on cruise control, and he never touched the brakes, hit my body on the run. I was thrown 90 feet through the air and impaled on a guardrail in the center median of the highway, bleeding to death.
Wow. I just can't. I don't know if anybody can even come close to imagining what that would be like.
I wouldn't want anybody actually to be able to fully comprehend that, because you would have to go through something like that to understand at that level. So the challenge for me when I speak to audiences is I share this story, and obviously there's a lot more to the story, but I need to make it relatable. And that's hard. Honestly, that's just hard because most people can't relate really to something like that. But they can relate because we have this saying in our language, I feel like I've been hit by a truck. We have that feeling of things going wrong.
It doesn't even come close to what it really is like.
Well, that's why I say sometimes life hits you like a truck. Sometimes there's an actual truck.
So if I may ask, I mean, I would guess that having to rethink the story, because I know you share the story in your presentations. Obviously, the way you speak about it, based on how I just heard you share the story, is that in some part you've healed from it, in another, but there's still healing to do there. And am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because I think that would be something that would, not so. It's not an easy situation to deal with. Oh my goodness, I can't even comprehend. Like, I'm at a loss for words, really. So basically, my question is, after having been in that situation, and now let's just fast forward. You're in the hospital. Let's just skip the whole rescue part because I don't know if at this point any of us could handle it. I think there's still processing just the whole of what happened.
Right.
But let's just say now you're in the hospital, and I don't know, what were they telling you? Were they telling you that you would be okay? What were they telling you?
No, that's another one of my incredible revelations about the importance of being present in this present moment right now. Because when I laid in an ICU, I was 7 weeks in an ICU in Wichita, Kansas, which is 1,800 miles from my home in just south of Seattle, Washington. As I was there, and my husband, of course, had flown in, and my mother, who is a retired physician herself, had flown in, nobody said, "You're going to be okay." I never heard those words, not for a long time. What I heard was, "You are okay. You're okay. I heard they're taking good care of you. You're okay." And the point and the meaning of that is that everything that had come before was pain, excruciating, obviously, pain and suffering and bad. I was crushed in multiple ways. My pelvis folded in half, organ damage, massive injuries, of course. I was on life support and for a while until I improved enough to come off life support. So nobody was saying you're going to be okay. They had no way to know that. What they knew was that I was okay right then in that moment. And I think as human beings, there is a valuable lesson in that we're okay in this moment right now. You don't know what's going to happen later, but right now you're okay.
And those words, because they were in the present tense versus the future, they made a different impact on you.
Absolutely. They changed my focus because, as you can imagine, in that situation, there's a lot of fear. It was very hard. It took intentional effort to keep my mind out of the fear of what might happen. Fear of pain, fear of dying, fear of the kind of disability I would end up with. I had a brain injury, so fear of whether or not I would ever recover to being able to string two sentences together. So many things. But if I stayed right in this present moment, right now, I'm okay. I have loved ones. People care about me. People are taking care of me and helping me. I'm okay in this moment. So even when they had to do procedures or things that were painful, that I hated, I could be okay with something in that moment. I could be okay with, well, at least I'm alive and this hurts and I don't like it. That's a pretty cognizant thought. That's a good thing. Or I have loved ones here with me. There's bad things happening that I don't like, but I can be present and grateful in this moment for that. And too often we get so busy, so wrapped up. And I've done this because I'm an entrepreneur, and we get so wrapped up in what am I going to do and what's on my calendar. The first thing I do in the morning, I pick up my phone, what's on my schedule for the day. I'm already looking ahead hours and hours and hours. And it's funny because here I learned these lessons in a great, big, powerful way. And I have to remind myself all the time, because now I'm doing very well. And I get back into this habit that we all get into of getting lost so far down the rabbit hole that we get ourselves worked up about whatever and forget that, you know what, it's okay. Just take a breath. This moment, this is okay.
That's remarkable. Would you say there was anything else besides that, knowing that you were okay, that helped you push through? Because most people would think this is it. I'm not going to be okay, even though I may be okay now. This is, they would look at, it would be easy to look at all the things that are not going well, right?
Right.
So what would you say was key factor, or if there was more than one, that helped you mentally deal with the whole situation? Because now your life is different. Mm-hmm. It did change your life completely, right? It's not the way it was before.
Absolutely. It is absolutely. The biggest thing for me is that my kids' photo, my husband taped a photo of our three kids onto the wall across from the bed where I could see it. And I would look at that photo. So the accident happened on March 1st, 2014. I took that photo on the first day of school at our favorite yogurt shop, the three of them lined up with frozen yogurt, just in September, maybe 5 months earlier. And I would lay in bed and look at that photo, and the only word that would go through my mind is no, just over and over, no. This is not their story. They do not lose their mother when they're a teenager. My daughter, who is our youngest, was 13 years old, and my brain was just screaming that no, they're not. This is not going to be their story, that they lose their mother at this time in their life, especially at such a critical time. And that gave me a tremendous amount of fight. One of my favorite books that I had actually read before this collision, and I wasn't thinking about the book at the time, but I think it's worth mentioning. There's a book by Lawrence Gonzalez called Deep Survival: Who Lives, Who Dies, and Why. And when I read that book a couple of years before the accident, the whole point in there and the stories that he tells is that people in these huge traumatic circumstances are living for somebody else. They're fighting for survival because someone else needs them, depends on them. And that was absolutely true in that moment for me in the hospital. My whole family needed me, and that was incredibly important, but really, as the mama bear in me comes rising up, that I'm going to fight to protect these kids. And what my kids needed protecting is they needed to have their mom to be around, to yell at them, to clean up their stuff and put away the dishes and all of the things that moms are supposed to do.
That's amazing. So they were your motivation. They were the key to getting your mindset focused on, there is no option. I'm going to get through this, and I write the story.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yes.
Were the doctors saying that there was hope? Like, I just want to know from a medical side, what were they saying? Were they saying that you would be okay eventually? Like, at what point did they Because I would think that after what you described, that they would not have given you a good prognosis.
No. When they first talked to my family on the phone before my husband flew out, when they got the call, and it was, of course, as you can imagine, a very brief phone call because they were busy trying to save my life. I had arrived in the emergency room with eyes fixed and dilated, no pulse, not breathing. I had to be resuscitated multiple times. My body was wide open. I had one of the surgeons who told me the only other time he's ever seen that much of the inside of a human body was on a corpse in medical school.
Wow.
To this day, I am one of those cases that even the surgeons really can't explain.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And they told my family I had a less than 5% chance of survival. My mom, as a retired physician, what she heard is that they were trying to give hope when there was actually no hope. She read between the lines because when they described all the injuries, you just simply don't survive that. You bleed out. Partly what helped is it was 5 degrees on the side of the highway, so that slowed the bleeding down. And the surgeons did some, they did some procedures that were really like Army field medicine kind of things, the things you do in wartime. They packed my abdomen full of all of these sponges, like 4 times the amount you normally would. And then they wrapped sheets around my body, like one giant tourniquet around my pelvis, and tied it in this huge knot, just trying to stop the bleeding. And so they weren't saying anything about a prognosis. They were incredibly compassionate to my husband. The surgeon, the night I arrived, later when she met my husband, and he would not leave my side, even when they told him to get rest, he wouldn't leave. So the surgeon brought him soup and to try and take care of him. They just kept saying, here's what we're doing. Here's the status. Later, once I was conscious, I was obsessed with staring at the machines that have all of the numbers and the blinking lights, little lines and all sorts of information. And I would stare at these machines, and if anything changed, I would go into a bit of a panic because those machines indicated to me whether I was living or dying. And one of the ways, I don't think I've ever actually told anybody this, to be honest. One of the ways my husband would respond to that, because I would go into distress, he responded by trying to lighten the mood and laugh. And he would say things like, you're fine, again, in the present tense. You're fine. Stop staring at the machines. You don't even know what it means anyway. You didn't go to medical school. So stop staring at the machines. And that helped tremendously. It made such a difference to me how people really focused on being incredibly present with me. And one of the things I realized was that my entire house of cards of my identity built on what I could do, how much I could accomplish, how much money I could make, or how many clients I had, or whatever. Because that's the way entrepreneurs have a tendency to think. My whole identity was shattered because I couldn't do anything, nothing. I wasn't even breathing for myself. And yet, there was this massive population of people caring for me. And I thought, wow, our value, it seems so obvious. I must be a very slow learner to have to go through so much to learn it, but our value is not built on what we do. Our value is built on who we are. And that's where I later began talking about leadership isn't something you do so much as it's who you choose to be, who you are. And that's something you have to practice all the time, every day, not just in a moment of crisis, because otherwise when the crisis comes, when the truck comes, you don't have the character to be a genuine leader unless it's something you practice, and who you are is what matters. And so you can have leaders who don't have a particular position of authority, because authority, the job, the tasks, that's not the thing.
Exactly. So leadership is not what you do, it's who you are.
Yes.
That is so true. So how did you make that transition? So let's say now you're out of the hospital. At what point did you decide, I am going to be speaking and I'm going to make my story useful to others?
Well, almost immediately, largely because after getting out of the hospital the first time, that was 3.5 months. And once I got beyond a lot of the initial healing, so I was thinking about it, because what I was thinking was, I don't know what else to do except be in front of an audience of people, run a business, be in front of an audience. That's pretty much all I know how to do. I mean, in the simplest terms, of course. And so about a year or so after the accident, I started thinking seriously about, okay, I need to use this story, because everybody I talked to, whether it was a grocery clerk or doctors in the hospital, everywhere I went, people were simply stunned by this story, and stunned that I had not let it crush me, that I hadn't let it well, it crushed me, but I didn't let it crush my spirit. And they wanted to know how. They wanted to know what it's like, people losing weight. What is the secret? Well, just like losing weight, there's not really a magic bullet. Well, if you just do this one thing, you too can be resilient. It is what you do every day, and the choices that you make. Part of what I realized is that my company continued to run while I was in the hospital. A whole team of people that I had worked with and trained and mentored continued to fill all of our contracts, and until we had no more contracts. And I thought, wow, I think I did something a lot more right than I had realized along the way. But one, I had hired incredible people and probably had not appreciated them nearly enough. But two, also the culture that we created in our organization enabled them to do that, enabled them to sail the ship without the captain on deck. So one of the questions that I ask people is, if you were hit by a truck tomorrow, could your business still operate?
That is so key in scaling a business, but it's also a true sign of leadership as well, to be able to have your staff trained enough and reliable enough to be able to carry on when you're not able to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that speaks volumes about you as a leader, even before you got hit.
Well, thank you. And I didn't realize it at the time. Of course, I was just trying to get the job done, and in the way I know how. And I hadn't really analyzed it or systemized it. But later on reflection, and as people started asking me to speak, so it was interesting. Then when I made the transition to being a keynote speaker, what I do now, I had no actual idea how to be a keynote speaker. I'd seen a lot of keynote speakers. I'd been a member of the National Speakers Association for many, many years because I was presenting programs. They just happened to be at fairs and crazy environments and entertaining and fun and with music, and I don't sing, but fun, silly music and costumes and things like that. serious point, but all fun stuff. I had no idea how to do a keynote speech, and it was really intimidating. I think the first time, when was the first time I did it? I think the first time I gave a keynote to an audience, it was 72 hours after a surgery.
After your surgery?
I'd had another surgery. Yes.
Okay.
I've had over 20 major surgeries, but this was a surgery that I didn't stay in the hospital for a long time. They did the surgery. I was released from the hospital. I went home. I thought, and I had been asked at the last minute, would I fill in for a keynote speaker who had to cancel? And this was at an association where I had served on the board for this association for 7 years. So I figured, well, I know these people. They know me. How hard could it be? So I agreed to do it 72 hours after surgery. And then I had complications from the surgery. I had horrible migraine reaction to anesthesia. So it really wasn't until the night before the surgery, or the night before the keynote speech, that I was able to really think about it and try and put something together. And I go back and I look at the video of that now, and it's painful to watch.
Well, I think all first time, presentations, well, the majority anyway, don't do so well. So maybe you should give yourself a break because you really have a lot of time to prepare for it.
No. But it was funny because I realized, wow, I need to actually spend some time learning more about this because I obviously can't just pull this out. It was fine. Don't get me wrong. It was fine largely because I'm telling an incredible story, and also I could already relate to the audience because I know them, and they were very forgiving because they're just happy that I was up and talking. But from a purely professional standpoint, that it's not what I do now because I've had a lot more time and practice in it now.
And now you have a podcast.
I do.
Tell us more. Tell us
I
about it.
do. You see, I get to do all of these fun different things. This podcast is called Letters to My Daughter. Because as I mentioned, our youngest child was in the 8th grade, 13 years old. She's graduating from high school this year. And in fact, we were out shopping for prom dress accessories last night. And she's amazing. She's graduating from high school with 90 college credits already under her belt, getting her Associates of Arts degree, and then transferring to university as an 18-year-old who's a junior in college. Along the way, we have had all kinds of conversations about how to be a strong, confident woman in the world. As she's moved through 8th grade, 9th grade, the trauma of high school and all of that, and making the decision that she didn't really want to be in that environment. She wanted to be in a college environment, and talking about how to present herself in a way that is strong, confident, but not witchy. That's not what that means. It doesn't mean to be mean or aggressive. That she can be girly, but also at the same time be powerful. And all of those years of conversations and preparing her to go into the world as a woman who is ready to be a leader, I thought, wow, had I died on March 1st, 2014, we would never have had these conversations. Who would have been around to tell her these things? So I decided I would create a podcast about these stories because these concepts, these conversations, these things that I would want my daughter to know if I wasn't around to tell her, or things that other women need to know. Maybe they haven't had a strong mentor in their life to tell them and share with them and talk with them, maybe cry with them if need be, over their growth as a young woman. And it doesn't even have to be young chronologically. It can just simply be young in growth of one's presence and owning that. So that's why I say that it's a podcast about women mentoring women and dedicated to daughters everywhere.
That is beautiful. What a beautiful thing to do. Not just keep it between you and your daughter, but to actually make it public and accessible to others that may need that mentorship. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. That is amazing. And you're also going to be a speaker at the Magnificent You Women's Conference.
I am.
I'm
Yes.
so excited.
I am so excited, and I'm bringing my daughter with me.
Is this the one daughter?
Yes.
Oh, that is amazing. So we get to meet her as well.
Yes.
So that's awesome. Awesome. And is there anything else you would like to share with us, Elisa?
I just, if people are interested in my podcast, they can look that up on iTunes or however you get your podcasts, Letters to My Daughter, or just from my website. It's elisahays.com/podcast. If you want to go straight to there. I absolutely welcome to hear from anybody. I love to have conversations with people.
Well, from all we shared today, like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that the reason of your success after what could have been a complete tragedy is the fact that you were, first of all, surrounded by an amazing group of people that was super supportive. They were there cheering you on when you felt scared and panicking. They told you you're okay now rather than giving you hope. They were telling you you're already okay.
Mm-hmm.
Your own leadership, maybe the fact that you had already been studying through that may have helped. I'm guessing that probably had some impact and getting your mindset into making that powerful decision, saying no, there is no option. My kids will have their mother.
Mm-hmm.
You're truly a miracle in so many ways.
Thank you.
You really, really are. And beyond that, I think you're a blessing to all of us that get to know you, not just because of your story, but because of who you are.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, because it does shine. It does shine through the words you say. I mean, your story is incredible and it's mind-blowing. But it's not just that. It's really the heart of who you are that shines through. So I want to thank you for that, because we need more people like you in this world.
Oh, thank you. That is so kind. Thank you so much. And I just really appreciate the work that you're doing. And all of the different women that you interview and you talk with and you get their stories out, and the Magnificent You Women's Conference, empowering women to own their confidence and their strength and to grow in their positions in the world is, oh my gosh, I get so excited about that. I really do.
I believe that we all have it within us, and those who are aware of it, I think it's our duty to help others, like you're doing it with your podcast, you're doing it through your presentation, and I feel like I do it with whatever I can think of that seems right at the moment. I'm very passionate about seeing all people, not just women, but women in particular, because I think women tend to beat on themselves more. At least that's the impression I get. I could be completely wrong, but women a bit more visibly so beat on themselves, and I feel it's such a crime when women can't see, or anybody can't see their true potential, whether it is on who they are or whether it is on what they're doing with their business, because they don't believe in themselves, because it's all tied, right? It's not just about what you do, it's about who you are, and who you are dictates what you do and how you do it. It is truly a joy to have you here as my guest in this episode. I am so looking forward to meeting you in person at the conference. I'm super, super excited. I know the audience, our listeners here, are going to be blown away by you and your wisdom and your words of leadership, your determination. And if they haven't decided to come to the conference, then maybe they will come now because of you. Absolutely powerful. That's all I can say. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please pass it on, and it would mean so much to me if you would leave an honest review on iTunes. I'd really appreciate it. Till next time, embrace your magnificence. Hey, small business owners, we've prepared a transformational event for you. The Magnificent You Women's Conference is designed to support you in your business growth journey. Most conferences focus on content and not much action. This conference will give you content from 10 amazing local and international speakers, but also place great emphasis on actions to be taken after the conference. We want you to ignite that one thing that will change everything. Excited? Get your tickets today.